Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, the third webinar of the series with the focus on the top 5 reasons why your data is costing your business more money than you think. My name is Desi Shao and I'll be your webinar moderator. Your presenter today will be Mike Martin. Mike is the Practice Director for Information Governance at BTRG. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items before we proceed with the presentation. Please note that all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question box located near the bottom of the control panel. We will be addressing all the questions at the end of the webinar. If you're joining the webinar via telephone, be sure to select the telephone option and use the dial-in number, access code, and PIN to complete the connection. Today's session will be available for download on our website at www.btrgroup.com/datawebinar. Following today's webinar, you'll also receive a follow-up email with more information on accessing these materials. Now we'll get started with the webinar. The floor is all yours, Mike.
Thanks very much, Desi. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for attending today. I really appreciate you taking time to join us. This is an ongoing webinar series. So the format of these webinars is very much more of a high level. You'll see our slides are rather big and bold with not many words on them because we're talking about concepts here, and hopefully to get you start thinking about and share our thoughts around trends that we're seeing in technology and really around information governance, because that's what my practice here at BTRG focuses on, is information governance for our clients. So today we're talking about top 5 reasons why your data is actually costing you much more money than you may realize, or maybe you do realize it, but we're calling out some things here that we hope will generate some thoughts for you. So the statistics, I think more folks are hearing about this recently, but it's still pretty shocking. So, 90% of the data in the world is really created in just the last 2 years. So we're really, in my view, at the beginning of a data explosion. We think we have a lot of data right now, but just imagine what it's going to be like over the next few years. And this is a trend in information technology that's really can't be denied. And now is the time to focus on data volume and what that means for us. So, in business, of course, the old adage, time is money, but data is money. And we look at it as sort of the new natural resource. And there's lots of great things we can get out of data. And I think a lot of the industry is focused on what we can get out of our data, especially with big data being so much in focus. But we also need to look at the costs and proper management of that data as well. Because as data increases, so do costs. So if we look at 90% in the last 2 years, you can see how significant that curve, that data growth curve will impact our costs. So one of the questions that we wanted to ask and get your feedback, so I really encourage you to please respond to that poll, and I'm going to launch that right now, so you should see that on your screen. Just really, what percentage of your overall data in your enterprise do we feel is where the critical information is? That information which will help us drive our business forward, that also maybe we're legally bound to keep. So, make sure that we know not just what's valuable, but also what we're obligated to store, because there's lots of regulation and retention schedules that we have to follow. So just keep that open for a few more seconds. If you haven't voted, please go ahead and vote. And I will close that out in about 3 seconds. Last chance. Okay. I'll close that out and I'll share the results with everybody. So you can see here, hopefully you can see those results. We're showing 40% 0 to 25, 40% and 25 to 50, and then 20% not sure. So I think that poll there indicates that we're all on the same page, that we kind of know, for the most part, 100% of our data isn't critical or valuable or really what we need to keep. So that's great. I think what I'll focus on here is some of what we're seeing and some of what we're sharing with our clients here at BTRG is that really it is a low percentage of data that's actually critical or valuable or even what we're legally bound to retain. And it can be said that 69-70% of information is actually not important for the business, not anything that we should be concerned about or really even retaining. Yet what we find is that most corporations and enterprises are actually retaining 100% of their data. They may be reducing their costs by tiered storage or other techniques, but they're actually not really deleting much data. So, a study by the Compliance Governance Council, CGOC, has found that this 70%, right? And so when we look at an enterprise, and if we consider that like this pie chart in this chart here in this slide, there's really three groups of data that have any value to us, right? There's the percentage that has business utility, about 25%. That's what is the real data that will drive our decisions. Even through trend analysis and even in a big data world, we're still looking at 25% is really what you need to make your business run and do that. A lot of big data proponents talk about, well, we want all the data so that we can evaluate trends and things like that. But my contention is that even with the advent of big data, you still should look at really what's valuable and what's not, and why should we clog up our big data with that stuff that's not important, even if we can process it faster. And if you go back to the earlier slide where we've got this 90% in the last 2 years, this volume is nothing that we have today. It's actually going to be much more significant volumes in any enterprise with growth rates around between 30 and 50%. Before you know it, you're going to have so much data you won't know what to do with it, and you'll wish you had deleted some things. So that's business utility. Then you have regulatory, record keeping, obligation. The laws say we have to retain student data so long, employee data so long. And then legal matters is what may fall even beyond that, where we have a legal matter, we're obligated to put data on hold. And so that amounts to about 30-31%. Everything else in the enterprise is unnecessary. And so we advise our clients to look at actually disposing of that data, but do it in a defensible manner so that we can normalize the growth curve and bring costs and risk down significantly. So now sort of getting into the top 5, right? So this is the top 5 reasons why your data is costing you more money. The number one reason, as I've alluded to already, data overload, right? You have too much. That's the number one reason why it's costing you. You've possibly not purged any data. And so you have this data debris that's clogging up everything you do. And here we are sitting on the precipice of even more data explosion. And it's compounded annually, right? So data is growing. The more data we have, the more we grow. This means that an enterprise at a high level, its businesses won't be as efficient because we've got too much data that we're processing. Of course, the IT department is suffering from systems that are overloaded, budgets potentially looking for cost savings in an IT budget, but we've got all this data. How can we reduce our costs if we're trying to manage all this storage? And then from a legal aspect, if I've got to do e-discovery on that pie chart and weed through 70% of my data, how can I get to that? How can I get to the right data? If I don't know where anything is and I've got too much data, it's very difficult. So if we're looking at 50 times growth projected over the next decade, if we have too much data today, it's only going to get worse. And how can we keep up with this? So that's number one, too much data overload. Number two reason is we're perhaps not properly securing the data. So one very surprising statistic is only half of the data in the world that should be secured today is not being. So we're only securing half of what we need to. That means 50% of our data is exposed. It's very sensitive, but we're not protecting it in the way we should. This equates to costs for us. If we had a data breach, what are the costs of data breaches? This is very much in the news lately. You can look at companies like Sony, Yahoo, LinkedIn, Evernote, Apple, and the list goes on of companies that have had experienced a breach, and the costs are just astronomical. Sony's is in the billions. The others, are high, and we know of others that are, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. Also, it's a lot more costly to secure your data after a breach occurs than doing it beforehand. Because now, after a breach, everything is locked down. There's a lot more process to go through and a lot more fear. You've incurred the cost of the breach, the remediation of the breach, and now you are definitely going to look at securing your data, but it's going to cost you more than it would have if you secured it in the first place. So, without a doubt, of course, securing your data in the first place is the way to go. And here at BTRG, we advise and help our customers to actually implement solutions, real tangible solutions, not just policy, but real tangible solutions. We help you get from zero to secured completely. And we know today, if you look at the most recent State of the Union address by the President of the United States, in that he mentioned cyber attacks and initiatives that the government is taking to prevent those. We know for a fact that individuals, corporations, and at this point, even foreign governments are actively trying to breach our federal and corporate systems for trade secrets, for basically anything they can get their hands on. So this level of risk is a cost. It is a significant cost to an organization, because think about what it would happen if it fell into the wrong hands. And we view data security as more than just a checkbox, but let's drive value there. Let's actually not only secure your data, but improve the auditing and automate the way that you can get your auditing done, so that when you conduct internal or external audits, it's actually faster and cheaper for you. So again, our approach at BTRG is to really focus on tangible solutions and real ROI results, rather than an information governance strategy that's very theoretical. So number two, it's not properly secured. That's a big, big cost factor. So the number three reason why your data is costing you is because you're not maybe storing data commensurate with its value, according to the data value equation. If we're, number one, keeping all of our data, chances are there is data that falls into that red zone, if you remember my earlier slide, that has zero value to the organization, and I mean zero value. And that may be currently today being stored on the most expensive, highest spinning, most costly storage that we have in the enterprise, especially databases. This is the case all over the place. So why would we do that? Well, because we maybe don't have a mature enough information governance strategy or a mature enough data archiving strategy. So here we espouse archiving older data, cold data, low value data, out of your databases into an offline store that you can actually tier. So instead of keeping 100% of my database in the most expensive disk, I'll keep what's valuable there, and I'll move the rest out to tape, optical, worm devices, cheaper storage. And then I'm storing much more commensurate with the value of that data, and therefore spending a lot more wisely, where now, because we're perhaps not tiering as fully as we can, we're not storing it according to the value. The other thing that we often see is that for enterprise applications, there's never just one copy of that database. You may have your production, you may have multiple productions, but you're certainly going to have supporting copies of that database, a development, a test, a QA, training environments. Oftentimes, those are 100% copies of the production. So if my production system already has 70% more data than it really needs to have, and then I copy that 4, 5, 10, or 50 times over, what am I doing? I'm compounding this problem even further, and I'm certainly not storing. So another strategy that you can employ here is to use a test data management strategy, where we actually create more right-sized copies. So my non-production copies of environments, maybe I only need even a sliver of data, current data, 6 months of data, a subset of employees, to do training or development, do I need 100% of all the data or just a representative sample? So that's a real key strategy. So that number 3 is, let's store all of our data according to its value, and then of course go a step further. Let's actually delete the stuff that has 0 value and no obligation for us to retain. So number 4 here is, costly reason is that we're not extracting the full value of the data that we do have. So that 30% of data, which actually is valuable to us, we may be not getting as much information or really the full value out of what's there. This speaks to our maturity of our analytics. What's our, AQ, our analytics quotient? Do we have sophisticated analytics where we're extracting and really bringing the right information to the right people at the right time? Especially, and again, coming from an information governance standpoint, in our view on information governance, again, is very strategic, tactical, and really giving you, ROI and results. Governance can help you get to the point where you are extracting the full value of your data. Certainly the analytics side of it, but also culling and moving data out that has low value frees us up to focus on that data where there is value. Even in a big data solution, you want to make sure that you are focusing your energies where you have the right information. Also, data quality comes into play here. Do we have incorrect data? Do we have quality mechanisms and metrics to not only clean our data, but keep it clean and monitor the health of the data quality over time? So, information governance should be a savings driver. It should actually make you money so that you can pay for the things that drive your business forward. We view information governance as not a burden on a business, but actually it should drive significant savings to allow you to focus on growth areas. Instead of keeping the lights on, you're actually growing your business. So information governance really key there. So that's the 4th reason. Number 5, and last but not least, is the high cost of low quality data, right? So if we don't have high quality data, we are actually perhaps spending money in ways that we shouldn't be. So there's a great example, and I know this resonated with me. You can think of a company that does mailing, perhaps an insurance agency, or you market through mailers. So if you're communicating with members or your clients and you send out direct mail, if you have poor address information or even not maintaining who is still a customer or not, you can actually be mailing 2 or 3 letters to the same address, and that adds up over millions of clients. So that's and I know myself, I know companies that I deal with, and I get a letter for myself and one for my wife and one for current resident and one from the people who lived in the house before me. They're sending me 4 copies of the letter instead of just one, and that's all that we need. So high quality data is a really key thing to drive where we can actually improve efficiencies and drive down the cost that our data is burdening us with. And again, going back to analytics, quality data is key for analytics. Make sure we're making proper decisions. You can't make good decisions on bad data. And we're perhaps missing opportunities because we don't have the full insight into our customers that we should. You can have great statistics, but if they're not collected properly and presented properly, you have an issue. And then there's this idea of perhaps we're working in silos, or we have silos of information in an organization. One of the things that we look for in information governance is how we break down those silos and bring stakeholders together and make sure that legal and the business and IT are working hand in hand. And actually, our company name is BTRG, which stands for the Business and Technology Resource Group. And in our minds, business and technology is the key part of that phrase. And we use the tagline bridging business and technology a lot, because really bringing those two things together and making sure that we're driving our technology to support the business is key. And oftentimes there's a big chasm between those two parts of our organization. And the more we can break down those walls and ensure that we're supporting in the proper way, the more revenue we can drive and the better off and higher quality information governance actually becomes a competitive advantage for our clients. So those are the top 5 reasons. Just to recap, number 1 was data overload. Number 2 is your data is not properly secured. Number 3 was we're not storing it according to its value. Number 4, not extracting the full value. And number 5, the high cost of low quality data. So just as a sort of parting thought, this idea of deletion, and we refer to it as defensible deletion. The best way to reduce the amount of data, delete it. It sounds so simple and straightforward, but we actually find that even companies on the road with information governance and those that are looking at doing deletion, doing tiered storage and doing information governance, but perhaps, they're just tiering. They're not actually removing data. And again, if you look at 70% of your data being debris, why would I keep that? Why would I move that data into my big data initiative that I'm implementing? Why would I want data of no value part of my analytics? So again, really, really, deletion is the key. So one final poll here. I'll go ahead and launch that. Again, I think we have a question which I'll look at as that comes up. But how does your organization really see the need to define and manage disposal of irrelevant data? I hope maybe after my talk here you might say yes more, but please go ahead and respond to that. So I'll leave that up for another second. We got 14% voting now, 29. So please go ahead and answer if you haven't already. You should see that. We'll leave that up for like 3 or 4 more seconds. Okay, last second or two. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll now. Okay, so I see 100% yes. That's great. I guess my follow-up would be, did you see that before this talk, or has the light gone on in what we've talked about here? But if you want to comment on that, please go ahead and comment in the chat box in the GoToMeeting. So how are we solving these 5 challenges? And actually, there's a question here. Do we see any of the 5 more prevalent than the others? And what do you see in our experience across industries? So, yeah, I think certainly I would focus on number 1. Have too much data. I think everybody has too much data, and so that's why we look at solving things through value-based archiving and defensible disposal. So number 1 is, and defensible disposal is a little more to get to. So what we like to recommend to our clients is, the problem is too much volume. That's where we can get immediate answers and the biggest benefit. So first, let's start archiving. Let's start managing data, both from an archive strategy, a tiered storage strategy, as well as a test data management. You get big savings under archiving. Archive any data that's old and you don't need it online in your most expensive storage. Store data according to its value. And then as we move forward, get to the point where we can actually defensively delete data. And the defensible part means we can justify that we've deleted it and we're treating all our data equally. So that would be my number 1 thing. And that's what we, in fact, are doing for our customers. And then number 2, I think the next big thing would be the security, because there's a tremendous amount of risk there. And we're seeing more and more companies across industries, from healthcare to retail to oil and gas, and even in the federal space, especially in the federal space, looking at how they can secure their data. So that's really key. So, look at that. Look at reducing volume and securing what's important and what's sensitive. So I'll just go ahead and start to wrap up here. I encourage you to look at the rest of our webinar series. You can find out more at btrgroup.com, and to register, you can go right to btrgroup.com/datawebinar. We have a series continuing. We've got May 15th, May 23rd, 29th, June 12th, and then a bonus webinar down there. Really hope you can make any of these. I thank you again for joining today. If there are any questions, go ahead and type those in. Again, my name is Mike Martin, and you can certainly find out more information about anything that I talked about and see the recording of this if you want to review it at btrgroup.com. So thanks again. I'll leave the webinar open for a few seconds in case there's any additional questions. But thank you all. I appreciate your response to the polls, and have a great day.